My name is Lisa. My name is Lisa Kergill. I'm privileged to serve as the head of the Secretariat of the United Nations Joint SDG Fund. And I'm one of the co-founders of this incredible Breakthrough Alliance. And I'd like to acknowledge the work of Radhika and Keith, who've enabled us to get this far, but also our third co-host, who's joining us also from the Stanford Network. This conversation, all of you gathered here today, are an incredible example of SDG 17, which is focused on partnerships, and how, in fact, this whole week of the SDG Summit, the General Assembly, and of course, Climate Week are really pushing the agenda for acceleration of the SDGs. Here inside the UN, we're witnessing a collective reaffirmation of both national and global commitments. They're all being officially registered at the SDG Summit. There's a platform and there's a political outcome document, and I'm thrilled to share that the one UN entity that is mentioned in the political declaration of this year's SDG Summit is the Joint SDG Fund. That is because we are, colleagues, the flagship financing vehicle chosen by the Secretary General, by Mr. Gutierrez and his deputy, Amina Mohammed, as the financing vehicle for the SDGs. And throughout the week here in New York, and I hope you've seen across the airwaves, we've seen facets of commitments to sustainable development. And to me, today marks the culmination of so many crucial dialogues of the week with an incredible lineup of speakers. We wouldn't be here today without Radhika and Keith inviting all of you to join us, and we're really so grateful. We need the UN to be in your circles, in your groups, in your conversations, and we want to do everything to make that a reality. Obviously, this week, the discussions have touched upon the transformative opportunity and progress in key SDG drivers. We call them transitions. This opportunity to really contribute to the realization of the SDGs by coming in a very focused way. And today's conversation, our central theme, is the intersection of decarbonization, but also digitalization. Two incredible elements that have spillover effects for so many around the world. And of course, the critical role of philanthropy, foundations, financial institutions, governments, and impact investors, and how your role can really ensure that these transitions and transformations not only remain inclusive, but also just and fair. So today, my personal goal is to help explore innovative funding models and collaborative strategies to address the challenges posed by the climate crisis, posed by so many other related crises around the world, and maximize the positive impacts we can make together on society and the environment. And together, that means we're endeavoring to advance the SDGs and the 2030 agenda. So without further ado, I pass over to Radhika to kick us off, and really excited to be a part of this. Radhika, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Warm welcome to all. The UN Secretary General called on all of us to come together for real practical solutions. Action is what the world needs now. This is not a time for indifference or indecision, he said on day one of the General Assembly, whose key theme this year is rebuilding trust and reigniting global solidarity. This is very much the spirit of the UN Joint SDG Fund Breakthrough Alliance of building bridges to catalyze climate action, combat the climate crisis, and create opportunities for all. We aim to accelerate awareness of the SDGs in America and globally, and to connect impact investors and policymakers from Silicon Valley and Hollywood, as well as the global community, bringing the power of tech, media, markets, and investment to advance the SDGs. One of our initiatives is Sustainable Development Goals America, critical in this powerful inflection point when we Americans take on a key role and responsibility in partnering to accelerate the SDGs in our country and in our world, following the lead of a visionary President Biden, who just spoke on how all our futures are bound to each other's. I am Radhika Shah, founding co-chair of the Breakthrough Alliance and co-president of Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, a community of students, alumni, and faculty advancing tech innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm passionate about leveraging digital innovation and building bridges to accelerate the SDGs. In today's dialogue, we will explore synergies between these deeply intertwined transitions of digitization and decarbonization. We can no longer think in silos. In my community, an intersectional approach is starting to happen. Stanford recently launched a new school of sustainability, which is very interdisciplinary. When announcing a partnership with President Lula of Brazil, President Biden recently talked about the linkage in his mind between job creation and climate change in this moment of AI and digitization. These are exactly the kind of bold and visionary actions, collaborations we need from world leaders, intertwining climate action and human development while leveraging the digital innovation. If we are to rebuild trust and reignite global solidarity, if we are to have a just transition that leaves no one behind, this is the kind of action we need. When addressing the 78th General Assembly, President Biden reminded us that our history does not need to dictate the future. Overwhelming challenges can be resolved when we hold our hands. We have the power to bend the arc of history. These words are as applicable to combating climate change as to world peace. There is nothing we all can't do together by collective, inclusive climate action, leveraging digitization, innovating for decarbonization, catalyzing inclusive climate financing, and climate policy. I believe we can together bend that arc of climate history towards a more sustainable future. Thank you. Over to you, Keith.
Well, thank you so much, Radhika, for your insightful words. In this unique moment, many recognize again the urgency of sustaining our planet. Others do not or aren't paying attention. So how do we get them to pay attention to policy, to sustainable values? Well, the key in advancing SDGs globally and in America key in on Secretary General Gutierrez's statements regarding a rescue plan for the SDGs. And it's not hyperbole. It is a challenge that we are all up to. And I certainly believe all of those on this call today. I'd like to thank the United Nations family and the joint SDG team and Lisa for their commitment and their insight and their professionalism. I'm humbled to serve with Radhika as co-chair of the Joint SDG Fund Breakthrough Alliance and represent Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs of Southern California, and proud to co-convene with Stanford Alumni and Sustainability and their co-founder, Claudia Kogut, another Stanford alum. And thank you again, all those around the globe and the US for joining us today on this collective and explorative journey. As Radhika described, the BA is empowered to be a coalition bringing technologists and storytellers in Silicon Valley and Hollywood, investors and policymakers and communities and innovators from across resources and regions to ID barriers and opportunities to accelerate SDGs in America and through the globe. And we truly welcome the partnership of John Schulhoff and Footprint Coalition and Robert Downey Jr.'s leadership in this space. The idea of finding synergies with digitization and decarbonization was embedded in the themes of the General Assembly this week: debt relief, economic resilience, disruption, climate change, leaving no one behind, clean water, international finance reform, human rights, and again, more debt crises. Many nation states suggest that the SDG Summit and its follow-up action must become a pivot point in our collective action. Positive elements do relate to an SDG stimulus package, as Lisa described, and the power of investing more in digital transformation and the potential of digital technology to accelerate innovation and inclusion is top of mind. Well, as Lisa and Radhika described, this is about a collective. And the Breakthrough Alliance Coalition, as Radhika described, reminds me of a media exit Stanford characterization of engineered serendipity, where attentive listening and careful curated planning can create opportunities for explorative minds to find and build connections across disciplines and across organizations. And this intellectual generosity is a critical component in the SDG conversation as the robust relationship between academic institutions and the industry. And we clearly need to support our various innovation ecosystems that accelerate transformational learning experience, ID intellectual property, and derive investment platforms and programs for sustainable development. And therein lies the rub, this deep, robust relationship between academia and industry. We're committed to this, to catalyzing this nexus of regional investors and connecting the global Stanford community. Like that to now, introduce Claudia. And thanks so much, Claudia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudia Kogut, and I'm thrilled to be co-convening today's event as co-founder of Stanford Alumni in Sustainability. Our group is an interdisciplinary and intergenerational community of Stanford alumni engaged in careers around the environment and sustainability. Our vision is to create an impact network that is collectively working towards a sustainable future. And we work to achieve that through a few ways. We hold social and educational gatherings for members, both virtually and in person, and work to create an organized network to connect distinguished alumni, young alumni, and current students with advice, mentorship, and professional opportunities. We have also been very excited about building bridges both within Stanford and beyond. We've been building a consortium of university alumni for a sustainable planet in partnership with like-minded alumni groups from Harvard, MIT, Yale, and Dartmouth. So I will keep it at that with regards to SAS, but we will be posting links to subscribe to our newsletter if you are interested and join our group if you are a Stanford alum. If not, if you are interested in learning more about the Cross-University Consortium and represent another university, please also don't hesitate to reach out. I would also like to just share a couple, 1 minute or so about some background about myself. I was a third culture kid, half American, half Japanese, growing up primarily in Singapore, but moved across 3 continents by the age of 8, so pretty nomadic. Perhaps unsurprisingly, I studied international relations while at Stanford. And since graduation, I have lived in New York, working in the retail industry for nearly a decade in product marketing and brand management roles at large companies like Tiffany and Estee Lauder. More recently, I've been turning my attention to eco-fashion, and I'm very excited about new materials innovation, and advocating for industry-wide change to limit waste and overproduction in the retail industry, which desperately needs major systems change. On a personal level, I also care very deeply about biodiversity, ocean conservation, wildlife conservation, and how human health is impacted by climate change and pollution. I am thrilled to be co-convening today's event alongside the UN Joint SDG Fund and Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs. And lastly, would love to thank Radhika, Keith, and Lisa for organizing this important event in the heart of Climate Week. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you, Claudia. Without further ado, we will now transition to our first dialogue of the day, Perspectives from Philanthropy, on our theme today of driving sustainable futures, synergies between digital transformation and decarbonization. The indomitable United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed just reminded us that the benefits and opportunities of digitization are not being spread widely enough. The transition to renewable energy isn't happening fast enough. The Sustainable Development Goals aren't just a list of goals. They carry the hopes, dreams, rights, and expectations of people everywhere. And she reminds us that the fuel required for SDG progress is finance. It is a moment when we don't just need a lot more of this fuel, we need also to democratize access to it, reimagine, redesign, re-architecture this fuel. I want to applaud the Joint SDG Fund's work in strategically catalyzing impact investment funding for developing nations, convening dialogues, and creating unusual partnerships and coalitions to save island states, and a lot more. In this dialogue, we will hear from 3 trailblazer women from the philanthropy sector who are transforming access to this critical fuel of finance for the SDGs in various parts of the world and globally. It has been an honor to get to know Deepali Khanna, Sunday Bridget Jones, and Naila Faruqi, whom I will be inviting to make 4 to 5 minutes of remarks shortly on how our theme today intersects with their work and their vision for our world. As part of their remarks, I also invite each speaker to touch on their perspectives on what they see as the most critical systemic change needed in this moment of digital transformation and decarbonization to effectively combat climate change, and what role the philanthropy sector can play in bridging the change and bringing this change. In the spirit of ensuring that we hear from all of the amazing participants today throughout the day's dialogue, we will be following the United Nations General Assembly protocol of muting each speaker when the allotted time is reached. The UN team reminded me to share this with all speakers. Our first speaker today is Deepali Khanna, Vice President, Asia Regional Office at Rockefeller Foundation, where she oversees efforts to amplify the foundation's impact and initiatives to make opportunities universal and sustainable, leverage financing and collaborations, thought leadership, and information on trends driving the continent's development. Deepali serves as co-chair of G20 India's Business 20 Task Force on Financing for Global Economic Recovery and is co-chair of G7 Japan Think 7 Task Force on Development and Economic Prosperity. She led Smart Power India to provide affordable clean energy access to over 1 million people in India. Welcome, Deepali. We can't hear you, Deepali. You're muted. Elaine, maybe you need to unmute Deepali. You might have a saying unmute yourself pop-up on your screen. Elaine?
He's unmuted, it's her computer.
Deepali, you're still
Go to Sunda and Deepali, may I suggest you to connect again?
Maybe Deepali log out and log in, and we will go to our next speaker and come back to Deepali in the spirit of time. Our next speaker is Sunday Bridget Jones, Vice President for the Americas and Chief Partnership Officer at the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, where she drives an innovative partnership construct for the Alliance and has leveraged global stakeholders in support of a just and clean energy transition in developing and emerging economies. Earlier, she served as Managing Director for Policy and Coalitions at the Rockefeller Foundation. And prior to that, she led the Office of Policy Planning and Public Diplomacy at the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. As a member of the White House National Security Staff Interagency Committee, Sunday helped develop the Open Government Partnership launched by President Obama's administration and the government of Brazil. Welcome, Sunday.
Thank you so much, Radhika, and thank you to you and to Lisa and to Keith and others and to Stanford University for hosting this. I'm really delighted to be here, and I do hope Deepali will have her audio sorted because she has been a wonderful colleague to me in my decade of working with Rockefeller Foundation. And if I might start in by saying that, you know, in terms of your question, I think that it is the energy systems in low middle income countries that deserve the most attention, I think, across a lot of our work. Green energy is the cheapest power in history, but not where it is most needed. We know that energy poverty persists for 3.6 billion people around the world without inadequate power, of whom 700 million have no electricity at all. And if LMICs meet their growing electricity needs from fossil fuels, they could account for up to 75% of global emissions by 2050. And that certainly would not help our efforts to move forward on the SDGs by 2030. So it was indeed the Rockefeller Foundation, in part Deepali's great leadership in her earlier work on Smart Power India and many other colleagues, the IKEA Foundation, the Bezos Earth Fund, and a host of international organizations, financial institutions, multilateral development banks, et cetera, that have come together to launch the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet to really drive forward and accelerate an agenda around renewable energy in low middle income countries. We were started only 18 months ago with a financial commitment of north of $1 billion of philanthropic capital, really looking to unlock, I think, other concessional capital, commercial capital to be supportive of renewable efforts around the world. And I think it's been really exciting to see all of this come together in a way that really helps to address the critical barriers that are in these markets, I think, especially as we think about some of the enabling environments that are not really there for green technology to come on board, even though it might be lowest cost in some areas. We've been looking very carefully about what are those blended finance mechanisms that might be helpful to get more of these green energy projects in the pipeline, more projects that are bankable for and attractive to private sector to come on board. And why is that? And I think I want to go back to the point that I made around those who are living in energy poverty, because the energy transition needs to be a just one. I think, Radhika, you made this point, certainly in the name of our institution being focused on people. And one of our main goals being, how do we enable 150 million jobs and enable the livelihoods of people who are living on diesel, living on other fossil fuels that is impacting not only their health, but their also, I think, economic prosperity moving forward. And so I think this is a really critical effort for us. The Global Energy Alliance, in addition to focusing on jobs and livelihoods, is very much looking to avoid 4 gigatons of CO2. We're also really pushing to improve reliability and affordable access to electricity for over 1 billion people in those markets. And if I might say just a quick point, because I know I haven't looked at the clock, but want to be respectful of time and allow others. There are really interesting innovations, I think, in this space and solutions that are coming up that we find quite attractive, whether it's battery energy storage systems that really help to support off-grid, and even thinking more about grid-based renewable energy efforts in certain countries, or even thinking about some of the work that Dipali initiated originally around distributed renewable energies, looking at solar mini grids and others that are supporting, I think, really great economic development for informal economic activity in various countries, getting people access to that to support their small businesses, to support use of mobile technologies, and to be thinking much more carefully, I would say, around how this impacts productive uses of energy, particularly the relationship between energy and agriculture, energy and health. So I put that forward as one thought, Radhika, but over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunday, for the inspiring insights. Thank you again for joining us. Dipali, is your audio working now?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, all set. Welcome, Dipali. Honored to have you here with us. Over to you.
So thank you so much, Radhika, and sorry for the glitch. It's truly an honor for me to speak today on a subject that is not just relevant, but absolutely crucial for our time. We are at an unprecedented crossroads in human history, where 2 megatrends are converging to redefine our existence on this planet. On the one hand, we have digital transformation, a revolution led by innovations and technology that is changing how we live, work, and interact. And on the other hand, we are compelled by the urgent need to decarbonize our economies to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change. These 2 forces are not merely parallel trends, they're deeply interlinked, and understanding this connection could be the key, from my perspective, to unlocking a more sustainable future. The connection between digital transformation and decarbonization is synergistic. Digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and blockchain are not just disruptors, they are truly enablers that can accelerate our progress towards sustainability. Let's take an example: smart grids that use AI algorithms to optimize energy use, reducing waste and lowering carbon emissions. Or we can consider digital agriculture platforms that allow farmers to use water, energy, and resources more efficiently, thus reducing the environmental footprint. The availability of big data and the ability to analyze it effectively can help us make more informed decisions than we've done in the past. Data analytics can provide valuable insights into human behavior, operational efficiencies, and energy usage patterns, allowing us to make decisions that are not just financially sound, but environmentally sustainable as well. That is why we at the Rockefeller Foundation have invested in initiatives like data.org to promote the responsible and ethical use of data for social good. This platform aims to utilize data science and digital transformation to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges, including climate change. We're also working with Digital Future Lab to explore the role that artificial intelligence can play in helping fight human-caused climate change. With the big bets like these, we could impact the lives of billions, especially the most vulnerable around the world. Earlier this week, I'm sure you just heard, we announced our new climate strategy. And over the next 5 years, the Rockefeller Foundation will invest over $1 billion and dedicate our entire enterprise to motivating the world to think bigger and act more boldly, and to making the climate transition more innovative and inclusive. We will help identify and scale the most promising climate solutions, and I believe that digital transformation has a key role to play in that. To your question, if I could point towards only one systemic change, it would be investing in programs to responsibly collect and process data. The present advances we see in digital transformation, for example, artificial intelligence, has been built on the back of freely available content on the internet that was processed by private entities. The same data infrastructure does not presently exist for social impact, especially for pressing issues like climate change. So in case of Asia, with the exception of countries like India, China, and Singapore, where there's currently the largest data management capacity, the data required to build machine learning applications is simply not available, or at least not in machine-readable formats. Many governments, as we know, lack the technical infrastructure and resources to regularly collect and update climate-relevant data. So where available, it is often fragmented and scattered across government departments with few protocols or standards for data sharing. This gets combined with the inability to readily transpose climate models across diverse locations, as they are unlikely to capture the specificities of local climate change impact or how these impacts are refracted through a local lens. That is why this call for investing in programs to responsibly collect and process data in low and medium income countries is vital for an equitable climate change fight. Big bets are expected from the sector of philanthropy to bring this change. Philanthropic organizations can provide the risk capital to test out innovative solutions that governments or the private sector are unable or unwilling to fund. In addition, philanthropy can play the role of a convener, bringing together stakeholders from various sectors, be it public, private, nonprofit, to foster collaborations that address these systemic issues from multiple angles. Through research publications, public discourse, philanthropic organizations can enable systemic change at the policy level, encouraging governments to act justly and swiftly, which is very important. By employing these levers effectively, the philanthropy sector can play an indispensable role in ensuring that the digital transformation and climate change mitigation efforts serve as not just milestones, but also as stepping stones to make opportunity universal and sustainable. Think about the first time you held a smartphone or used the internet. It was magical, wasn't it? So these technological wonders have transformed our lives in ways we couldn't imagine a couple of decades ago. Now imagine harnessing that same transformative magic to save our planet, to preserve the beauty of a coral reef, or to ensure our children can experience the joy of seeing a polar bear in the wild, not just in history books. I am optimistic that it is possible when we all come together. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dipali, for the inspiring perspectives and for your leadership and catalytic work at the Rockefeller Foundation. Our next speaker is the brilliant Naila Faruqi, CEO for the Arab Foundations Forum, a regional membership-based association of foundations and other philanthropy actors working across the Arab region. Naila is a Peabody Award-winning executive who has built a career across several continents with deep experience in project management, media production, and strategic communication. Earlier, she served at the iconic Sesame Workshop in New York, responsible for managing the project, content production, and creative aspects of multimedia co-productions of Sesame Street in 17 countries. Welcome, Naila.
Thank you so much, Radhika. I'm just going to turn on my timer to make sure that I stick to the 5 minutes, because God forbid I get muted. So thank you so much for thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today. I really appreciate the opportunity. And just to kind of give a little bit of context about what I can talk about. So I don't know anything about climate. I am not a climate expert. I don't know anything about decarbonization. But what I do represent is a network of philanthropy actors working across the MENA region. So this is a region of 22 countries, about 420 million people. It has a youth population of over 50% under the age of 25. So kind of a very burgeoning kind of youth population. And also is home to a lot of the countries that are perhaps not contributors to the climate crisis, but definitely on the receiving end of the consequences. So this is a very timely conversation for me to get involved with and to speak on, because I just came off of a 4-day annual meeting for my network. And it was the first time my network had met since 2017. We all convened together in Cairo. And so it's been a long time since we'd had an opportunity to kind of network and, face to face, and to talk about a lot of the issues that have come up against our sector in the last couple of years. COVID obviously being one of the most impactful, but then also this climate crisis. Coming off the heels of COP27 having taken place in Egypt, and now COP28 taking place in the UAE. So 2 COPs, back to back in the region, has been sort of an inflection point for us. Going into COP27, we had a bit of a scramble in the region of, oh my God, everybody needs to talk about climate. And as a network that convenes a lot of the philanthropy actors, and particularly foundations and donors in the region, we realized that climate was not top of anybody's agenda, at least not anybody in our network. And I'm very, I need to be very clear, because people get very upset with me, other actors in the region that are very, very focused on climate. So I'm not saying that nobody in philanthropy is talking about climate in the Arab region. That's not the case. But what I can say is, from our evidence of members in our network, which is a very strong network, we reach at least anywhere between 1,000 to 1,200 network members, even if they're not official members of the Arab Foundations Forum. So the network is wide enough that we know that it wasn't top of agenda for anyone. So we look at, in terms of addressing this issue, we came to COP27. I went to COP27, was the only representative of Arab philanthropy, 40,000 people in Sharm el-Sheikh, and I was the only one representing a network of Arab philanthropy. So that was a little bit jarring. And also kind of, expedited the urgency of us really having to look at our network and figure out, why are people not engaging in this issue? And we found a couple of reasons. So it echoes a little bit of what Sunday had said, as well as Dipali. Enabling environment in our region, a little bit lacking. And when it comes particularly around the issue of climate, we need to have some incentives for why people should put this top of their agenda. Data and access to data in the philanthropy sector is very, very scarce. It's something that we as a network have been really pushing to try to change. We're launching an Arab philanthropy survey that is across the region, across the sector, to ensure that we're sharing the kind of data that foundations need to understand a little bit better about what they're doing, what others are doing in the sector, and then where the gaps are, so we can fill those gaps. And we know that the climate issue is going to come up as one of the gaps. COP28, we're partnering with a number of different organizations that will be present at COP28, including the Business and Philanthropy for Climate initiative through the Gaia initiative with the World Economic Forum. We're also partnering with WINGS, the WINGS Network, the Worldwide Initiative for Network and Grant Makers Support, on their Philanthropy for Climate call to action, which has over 600 signatories to date. And looking to bring on more signatories, particularly from the Arab region. So we're hoping that we can work with WINGS to take the framework and adapt it a little bit to make it a bit more relevant, because one of the key things that we realized from our conversation with our network is that many of these frameworks don't necessarily apply to our sector, because we're a little bit on a different or in a different part in our journey getting to climate. So we know that we need to talk to our governments. And networks are a really good place to do that, to have that sort of advocacy, because it's a unified space where we can advocate on behalf of an entire sector rather than putting one organization at the front. And we know that we need to talk about looking at creating an enabling space so that we can have these conversations and that we can come up with more innovative models to address this issue. And that's my timer, right on time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naila, for insightful and thought-provoking remarks. A special thanks to our speakers and everyone joining. By embracing DSG Amina Mohammed's call for solidarity, determination, and possibility, we can save our species and our planet. We can make the solemn promise of the SDGs of leaving no one behind a reality. We can reimagine and recreate the breakthroughs and fresh momentum she reminds us our world needs. Thank you.
So I believe that's my cue, Radhika. We're moving into section 2. Wonderful. Colleagues, what a brilliant kickoff session. I just wanted to echo Sunday's points about just transitions. The strategy for the Joint SDG Fund over the next 4 years, as advised and guided by the Deputy Secretary General, is absolutely to plug and play into the 6 major transitions that have been identified by the Secretary General for SDG acceleration. And they are transforming education, they are climate and energy, they are social protection and job creation, they are food systems, and they are localization of the SDGs, bringing all of that, of course, down to local level and impact on the communities. I think the fact that we recognize the pace and the speed through which some actors can progress, while others may need more of that enabling environment. Just to go back to Naila, I think those are the bread and butter efforts of the UN and many partners on this call every day. The 2 DNA strands of the Joint SDG Fund are integrated policy support to UN country teams around the world and leveraging and attracting financing. Those are the 2 pieces that we try to bring to governments on behalf of the entirety of the UN development system. It's a $50 billion a year spend of the UN development system, and many names you're very familiar with: UNICEF, WHO, UNDP. But then it's the smaller, more bespoke parts of the UN family that also bring expertise, like the International Telecommunications Union that will work on digital transformation, for example, or how UN Women is the normative strength of the UN for gender empowerment and mainstreaming. So just wanted to pick up that the previous speakers are really sort of advocating already for a lot of the work we do, and I really look forward to the ongoing discussions with all of you. And now I'm delighted to move to the second panel, our second dialogue, and this is specifically to bring perspectives from government and impact investors. I'm delighted to welcome Costa, Jonathan, and Kamal, and we have one guiding question. But first I'll introduce Costa Samaras. Dr. Samaras is the Chief Advisor for the Clean Energy Transition at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. And this is where Costa engages senior leaders throughout the government in coordinating federal activities and direction of the U.S. energy technology policy to meet President Biden's goal of a net zero emissions economy no later than 2050. Costa, it's really a delight to meet you. It's an honor. Thank you so much for your time. The guiding question for you and our other 2 panelists this morning are really looking to the strategies that you believe, especially for you inside government, you need to prioritize to really ensure that all of your efforts do drive sustainability and also align with our shared goals of climate change mitigation and sustainable development. Costa, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Radhika and everyone, for the opportunity to be with you today. I'm going to provide some overall context of the work that we do, but more importantly, the work that you all do and how much it matters. The things that you are doing every day to ensure a livable climate for everyone is essential and makes a real difference. And here's how I think about it. Every 10th of degree of warming that's avoided matters to you, to everyone you know, and everyone you don't know. Your work matters every day. President Biden was at the UN this week, and he said that we need to bring commitment, urgency, and ambition as we work together to meet the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. We at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy work to bring this ambition to life by harnessing the power of science, technology, and innovation to achieve our greatest aspirations. We know that building a net zero emissions economy requires unprecedented levels of technology deployment, commitment to unlocking the possibilities that are enabled by clean energy innovation. And as I'm sure you've heard everyone say this week, the president has undertaken the boldest climate action ever to combat the climate crisis and help move the global economy toward a clean energy future. President made a commitment to reduce U.S. carbon pollution by 50 to 52% by 2030 and to get to a net zero emissions economy no later than 2050. But here's the important part. The administration is dedicated to ensuring that the clean energy transition is just and creates opportunities for everyone and advances environmental justice, lowers household energy bills, and grows good-paying jobs. Together, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act that the president signed invest nearly $500 billion to build clean energy and climate resilient systems and touch really every sector that produces greenhouse gases in the economy. These laws are designed to drive energy innovation, learning by doing, and to catalyze and crowd in much more investment by the private sector. Over the next 7 years, we expect twice as much wind, solar, and battery deployment as there would have been without these laws. But solving the climate crisis requires big bets, big ideas, and big actions every year. On virtual power plants that are digitally connected to distributed energy resources that can maximize carbon reductions. On new ways to power planes, ships, and trucks. And on net zero emissions steel and cement. Also on building in regenerative circular practices throughout the economy. And then finally, on managing increasingly complex zero carbon emissions electricity systems connected to billions of digital devices. But the only way digital transformation and decarbonization can scale is if it works for everyone. This includes listening to and addressing environmental justice, pollution, cumulative burden concerns, as well as mitigating community risk and maximizing community benefits. Dr. Prabhakar, our director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, often says, we need innovation focused on what it takes to get the job done at the speed and scale necessary so that the climate takes notice. The public and private sector now have to scale up a net zero economy that leaves nobody behind. I'm excited for the discussion today and ready for us all to get to work. Thanks, Lisa.
Also, thank you so much. It's so inspiring to hear from the inside how much detail is already being analyzed and pushed through with the legislation that's already in action and plans for the future. So thank you so much for that insight. Really, really exciting. I'm now delighted to move to our second speaker, our esteemed panel, Jonathan Schulhoff, who is CEO and managing partner and co-founder of Footprint Coalition. Footprint Coalition Ventures is an environmentally sustainable technology venture capital firm, VC, and he started this in partnership with Robert Downey Jr. and Steve Levin. Jonathan was also and is also founder and lead investor in Motivate, which owns and operates City Bikes. I'm a huge fan, and other leading North American bike sharing systems, and has started numerous finance VC firms and others that are focused on net zero energy. So Jonathan, coming over to you now, sitting in that impact VC space, what strategies do you apply to what you manage and what you're looking for? What trends you see? What are the KPIs you use? We need your trade craft, John. How does the UN and many partners on this call become a good potential partner for your work? Over to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Lisa, Radhika, and Keith for putting the panel together, and to all the other panelists that I'm joining today. So first, I'm glad you referenced the City Bike experience, because it really is part and parcel for our strategy and what we're trying to do at Footprint Coalition, which is, we believe that symbols matter in this move to normalize a new understanding of how we mobilize resources and what we accept as the everyday ways in which we do things. City Bike is a great example, not only of a point-to-point digitally enabled mass transit network that delivers an individual freedom, it connects communities, but it's also a great virtue signal of cities that believe in the future, and it's not just City Bike, but bike share everywhere. And so it was with that kind of realization that we endeavored within Footprint to first begin by mobilizing symbols. And if ever a category needed a hero like Iron Man, this is it. So I thought, when I talked to Robert about his ambition to do this, that we'd have a unique ability to connect his audience with the good work that we do here. And so the way to translate that for us was to really create a community of people who really care within his audience through digital publishing. And so what we do at Footprint then is to cover the entrepreneurs, cover the policy trends, the corporate money flows into the category, and offer people a way to, one, understand in an optimistic voice what's going on, and two, think about ways to be supportive. Young companies really appreciate that kind of attention. They love the opportunity to set themselves out as leaders in their own category. And, they're trying to raise capital, hire great people, and ultimately convince other stakeholders to take a risk on the way in which they're doing business, all of which is served through the outreach that we have. What comes out of that for us then is an enormous amount of inbound of opportunities and a research organization that sees the landscape of opportunity. And so our job then as venture investors is to identify what is the convergence between the tech trends, the money and policy trends, and where there uniquely great teams that are forming around the subject. So with that, we've made now 26 investments. But to touch on the theme for today, which is really about how is digitization impacting climate, I would just touch on a few things that we've seen through this work. I would say the first is we are fortunately dealing with a fairly analog, inefficient system today. So there is a lot of low-hanging fruit when you begin with an analog system and move it to digital. The most personal example of this that we have in our portfolio is something everybody on this call can relate to, which is the fact that all of the electric content in your home today goes to a thumb-switched place, which is your circuit breaker panel. And it is like the physical incarnation of an old world technology. But if we're to make better use of the energy that we have, we can begin by allocating the budgeted power in a more efficient way by digitizing and enabling everything else in your expectations for a technology forward device is digital, software controlled, and dynamic. And that doesn't do any of those things. Just to give one example, at the city level, we also see cities having poor control over policy enforcement for where vehicles are moving within a city. And so why are we, in an analog way, writing parking tickets and asking trucks to idle in certain zones in a city, rather than arming a city with digital precision over GPS-enabled assets that move throughout the city every day? And so, just a couple of really low-hanging fruit examples. We see this in the power of new data sets coming online, empowered by new sensors and sensor technologies, whether those are new forms of satellites going into space that offer precision for measuring things which today are best measured by drone, which is itself an advancement, but now from satellite, being able to precisely measure methane emissions, precisely look at rooftop conditions for solar installations. And then the accelerants, as has been discussed today, of applying latest data technologies and AI to those data sets to rapidly accelerate permitting and think about where new energy efficiency projects are to be taken on. So it's I think for us, the opportunity to do more in the places we have, let alone the heroic new technologies that will transform how planes function, whether it's hydrogen coming on board or the really hard science that's there we see an enormous opportunity through digitization to get at the analog low-hanging fruit of the systems that are already entrenched and already in place. And so, we're just trying to help people gain an awareness for this stuff, because oftentimes they don't even know what's available to them. Our government has done a great job of offering enormous incentives for people to take on those types of projects, but it's a real challenge in terms of getting the public the information required, whether it's at the individual level or even the small towns and cities, to apply for those types of programs. So anyways, happy to do our part, and really thrilled to be part of this esteemed group today.
Jonathan, thank you so much. First of all, congratulations to everything Footprint Coalition is working on and also fostering, right, by really letting those young up-and-coming entrepreneurs, those disruptors and innovators really fully explore the potential of their idea. I think it's interesting when you talk about low-hanging fruit, and I think about my years in Somalia and Kenya and South Sudan and Mozambique. We have least developed countries, again, Sunday reminded us of that, those 700 million people who don't know a light switch. And how many years until they do? And shouldn't we leapfrog ahead so that they never have one? The way many countries skipped landlines for phones entirely. They went straight to mobile, right? This is Mo Ibrahim of the Elders Group. I mean, he just basically took the whole government systems and leapfrog. So to me, connecting the dots between the cutting edge technology that you're already seeding, and then trying to find a way to allow our developing country brothers and sisters leapfrog would just be an incredible way to really reach those SDGs, because again, we have so little time. So thank you so much. I'm delighted now to go to our third speaker, Kamal Sahu, Chief of Sustainable Finance at the Asia Venture Philanthropy Network. Kamal serves as Chief of Sustainable Finance at AVPN. She leads engagement with family offices, high net worth individuals, private wealth holders, corporations, financial institutions across Asia. And she helps the stakeholders achieve their objectives of investing within a framework of impact and sustainability. So Kamal, thrilled to have you with us. Another very critical perspective that you bring, which is what strategies do you really inspire your network to review, consider, and then apply to their personal wealth or their institutional wealth? And do you see also any trends in what the UN can learn from this and how we might be a better partner? So thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Radhika, for inviting me. And thank you, Lisa, for the question. John referred to the high-tech solutions. If you think of Asia, and we as a network sort of amplify the voices of Asian stakeholders, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to be had. Asia has half of the world's population. It has clear issues when it comes to, if the war on climate is to be won, Asia, which is the manufacturing hub of the world, the issues need to be addressed in Asia itself. There is still great reliance on dirty fuel. Basically they're pulling the coal out of the ground, despite, good intent, good interest, and conversations being driven by the global north into the global south. There's a great deal of work to be done, both from a policy perspective and actually from an investment perspective. The issues around climate have not been created by the global south, but the global south is is front and center in terms of dealing with the catastrophes and the calamities that climate change has brought to them. So we're talking increasingly about decarbonization. However, they're energy poor. Many of these countries are energy poor, do not have access, as you said, to a light bulb. So some of those issues will need to be addressed in Asia. And so the question is, how do you facilitate that? So our members, our stakeholders, our impact investors are looking at what can be done. This year, for example, we hosted our conference in KL, and Dipali, which is Rockefeller Foundation, is a strong member of ours. We had 1,300 social investors come to the conference, and all of them, climate is the overriding conversation for them. We've seen that, clearly climate is, and the energy transition piece is the biggest piece of it. How do you create infrastructure around energy transition? Renewables will take a while to come on stream. You may have sort of drive towards renewables, but you need incentives, you need subsidies for those renewables to come. You need, there have been just energy transition partnerships, for example, created with Indonesia, with South Africa, and we're now seeing increasingly India making commitments towards it. But the funding is a drop in the ocean. It's not enough. So we need to drive capital markets to address these issues. Blended finance may well be a way to do that. We are speaking to increasingly family offices. In Australia, for example, Minderoo, Andrew Forrest is a strong proponent of clean energy. He's driving conversations around hydrogen. We're seeing some of our members address these issues with their philanthropic give, but it needs everyone along that entire capital stack to play the role. We have impact funds such as Leapfrog that have, has partnered with entities such as Temasek, which has invested $500 million into the climate-focused aspect of Leapfrog's funding, which is looking at smart solutions. And perhaps some of those global north solutions may have application in the global south as well. And we need to learn. There's an openness towards that learning. There's an openness towards that adoption, but it's not going to be cookie cutter. We've seen again a trend towards digitization. There was internet poverty, and I think in a way COVID has accelerated the adoption of the internet. So we've seen greater and greater digitization happening, from the local fruit seller in the market accepting digital payments to, may not be educated, adoption of, again, phones. We're seeing some of that happening, but really we need greater monetary contributions towards addressing these challenges. And we also need some thought leadership and guidance where necessary, and also focus on listening to the community, the vulnerable communities, the Asian voices also to be brought to the fore for there to be the impact that needs to be generated. But there are clearly members who are in a position, who are doing the right things, but we also need the multilaterals, we also need the DFIs, all of those organizations to step in and say, look at development in Asia and say, the need is here and now, and there is an urgency around it.
Well, thank you so much. Firstly, for reminding us that it has to be the voices of the most vulnerable that steer us, that guide us, that are our North Star, but also to sort of remind me that we do have the first lost money of the Joint SDG Fund to try to be a part of that capital stack that you indeed are helping build in these different blended financing instruments. So just a lot of great synergies in what you mentioned. Thank you so much for making the time. Delighted to have you. And without further ado, I pass to Keith. I've been reminded we're slightly behind time, so I will zip and pass to you, Keith. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We've just heard from Kamal describing, despite good intentions, that there's still a lot of work to be done. In one area, the description of localizing these solutions in terms of facilitating these practices, the ideas of blended finance, blended tech, these whole capital stacks. In some respects, that's very similar to a relationship that really drives innovation, and that relationship between academia and industry. And so we're fortunate today to have with us three individuals that are part of the academia ecosystem of Stanford University. And I will just mention them now and then do some bios post conversations. The individuals are Professor Rita Katila, Professor Michael Lepek, and postdoc Anna Lukarinen. But first, I'd like to introduce Professor Rita Katila. Professor Katila is a professor of management science and engineering, and also the research director of Stanford Technology Ventures Program, which is a dynamic and robust entity on the university campus that acts as a conduit between IP on campus and industry and labs off campus. So I was hoping, Professor Katila, that you could just briefly share with us a little bit about your research and STVP and how it functions as that conduit.
Absolutely, and thank you, everybody. Great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to bring in a research perspective to the discussion. And thank you for organizers. This is a wonderful discussion. So Keith asked me to talk a little bit more about our center, STVP. It is Stanford Engineering School's Entrepreneurship Center. STVP is Stanford Technology Ventures Program for short. And our motto in the center is to empower aspiring entrepreneurs. And that is our students, not only in the School of Engineering, but at Stanford schools worldwide, really, to become global citizens who create and scale responsible innovations. So I know that's a broad goal, but very much aligned with the sustainable development discussion today. And our center is specifically focused on advancing both groundbreaking research as well as teaching and outreach in the area of technology entrepreneurship, innovation. And two of our main goals this year are sustainable entrepreneurship and responsible entrepreneurship. So very much what we're talking about today is front and central in our teaching, in our research and outreach efforts in the center right now. And I don't want to be unmuted or don't want to be muted because I know I only have 1 minute. Keith gave me 1 minute to do this intro. So what we're going to do next is I will introduce my postdoc, Anna, who will talk about one of our current projects in the center. She's an expert in sustainability and venture finance. And I thought introducing our joint project where we are asking whether crowdfunding can be an answer to fund sustainable enterprises. And how do we get everyone? How do we get the crowd interested and committed to investment opportunities in the area of sustainability? Might be something that is a good discussion starter for our more academic research segment. So I'm going to turn it over to Anna to introduce our work, and then back to Keith for more introductions.
So I'm really excited to give you a glimpse at our research. To do so, I would like to share my screen, if that's okay. Here, it will be short. But so as Rita mentioned, we are looking at how sustainability signals attract crowd investors. As background, when doing our general research on entrepreneurial finance, we also realized that the world is burning, melting, and flooding, and that entrepreneurial ventures are well positioned to contribute to sustainable development as long as they get sufficient funding to do so. So we decided to look at equity crowdfunding, which allows for the general crowds of non-accredited individual investors to invest in the equities of new ventures. And so equity crowdfunding offers from its part to democratize entrepreneurial finance. So we ask, how do crowd investors react to sustainability signals by ventures? And by crowd investors, we mean the subscribed users of an equity crowdfunding platform. And by sustainability signals, we mean written cues about the sustainability orientation of a venture. Now, one common characteristic of many sustainable ventures is that they face a lot of uncertainty. They often operate in new industries, they are using or developing novel technologies, as we have heard, and they are also often subject to regulatory volatility around environmental policies. And this venture uncertainty may translate into investor uncertainty.
So we look at a European equity crowdfunding platform. They have over 40,000 users as investors, and the average amount raised per venture per campaign is around €500,000 or dollars. And importantly, this is a generalist platform. So the investors are just general people, not particularly focused on sustainability. So this allows us to understand what the general crowds are thinking and doing. And we do our tests using a randomized experiment with the email newsletter of the platform. Every week they send out a newsletter describing a venture. And what we did was include a sustainability signal into the headline of the newsletter. And then every week this letter is sent to around 40,000 investors. And we added a sustainability signal to a randomly selected half of the headlines of these letters. I'll show you results for 2 rounds. BoatCo makes electric boat motors, and VehicleCo makes light electric vehicles. So for BoatCo, the sustainability signal was just the word more sustainable. And for VehicleCo, it was light electric vehicle. To the results. On the left, you see the probability of investing when people did not receive a sustainability signal. And on the right, you see the probability of investing when people did receive a sustainability signal. So we see that when crowd investors received a sustainability signal, they were significantly less likely to invest. And these differences are both statistically significant and economically meaningful. So the obvious question is why? Well, we know that these ventures are relatively uncertain because of their sustainability, and this might be deterring investors. And we can look at this by looking at different investor segments who differ in their tolerance of uncertainty. For example, experienced investors tend to tolerate more uncertainty because any investment they make becomes part of their larger portfolio. And so if we look at the results separately for experienced investors and inexperienced investors, we do see that it's especially these inexperienced investors who react very negatively. When they receive a sustainability signal, that almost halves their probability of investing. Now, finally, it is worth mentioning that there are some investor categories who do react positively to sustainability signals, such as experienced investors who have explicitly stated that the environment is important to them. But these are unfortunately relatively small subgroups of the entire investor population. So to conclude, we asked how crowd investors react to sustainability signals by ventures, and we saw that most investors react negatively, probably due to their uncertainty avoidance. But this is good to know because sustainable ventures can mitigate these negative reactions by providing the right information and by targeting the right audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing with us the randomized experience on crowdfunding. It's very provocative work, and we'll be here to continue to support your efforts with Professor Katila. I'd like to introduce now a gentleman who is an innovator in his right, and that is Mr. Michael Lepek. He's a professor of civil and environmental engineering and a senior fellow at the Woods Institute for the Environment, and deeply engaged within the Dorr School of Sustainability and supports our innovative students through the Mayfields program. So look forward to your remarks, Michael, and then we'll have a 5-minute roundtable round between. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. And I'm looking forward to some discussion after I just make some short comments. Before that, I want to thank you and Radhika and Lisa for organizing this. It never stops amazing me how active and involved the Stanford family is in solving global problems. And so thank you for doing that. I also have the pleasure of being involved both in STVP, the Stanford Technology Ventures program, along with Professor Katila. I'm leading up our climate and sustainability efforts within STVP. And also I do have the pleasure of being a faculty member both in the School of Engineering and in our new door School of Sustainability. You know, one of the things that we wanted to think about in this panel was the role of both digitalization and decarbonization as it fits with investment opportunities as they relate to climate and sustainability. And, you know, I think within the digitalization and digital innovation piece, there's a number of really distinct opportunities, some of which have been mentioned thus far as it connects to smart cities and more sustainable urban areas. One of them, of course, is tracking and emissions. And I think there was a nice piece this morning in the Wall Street Journal talking about some new push from both the EU and the state of California to think about public and private corporations having to report emissions throughout their supply chains. And I think that's going to push things forward a great deal because it's going to force us to start tracking and creating new ways to think about tracking emissions and impacts throughout the value chain. And that's not just climate emissions, that includes all kinds of other components within the SDGs. And then, of course, there's also a major component around increasing efficiency and productivity within the existing economy to reduce input and to reduce output when it comes to emissions and environmental impacts. And, you know, I think both of those, both the tracking piece and the increasing of efficiency and productivity of existing industrial systems lend themselves very well to the traditional highly capital efficient venture capital model. There we tend to talk more about software. We tend to talk about things that are coming in and sold through a vendor model through in many regards very large corporations. And so that fits well with, I think, the current stack of finance that we have. And then we transition over to more of the decarbonization, particularly the deep decarbonization that we're going to need to address the bulk of the climate change challenge. And that's where I think the challenges across the venture and startup landscape become more challenging. You know, last spring and continuing this quarter, we've organized a class here at Stanford for our students that are most interested in entrepreneurship, asking the question of how entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship in climate and sustainability is different than traditional entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship. And indeed, our list of amazing speakers, of which Keith was involved, has said, yes, indeed, there are significant differences. But every single speaker highlighted different differences. And so it came to a realization that there are many differences. When we talk about deep decarbonization, it's going to involve a collaboration between startups and large companies. The large companies are going to have to adopt many of the things that we're thinking about in order to get the scale that is necessary on the timeline and the scale that's going to be necessary to make meaningful change. Startups are going to continue to be important through their role in innovation and their role in coming up with new ideas and putting them in place. And academia has a really important role to play, both in the creation of IP, but more importantly, and our most important product in academia is people. Really smart, young people who are passionate about this problem and want to go and solve it. And so I think that's actually our biggest impact that academia can have on addressing and solving this problem. So just a couple last things that I'll mention. When it comes to the overall capital stack, I think there's some really great points that have been made. I would encourage folks to visit our website on sustainable capitalism and how family offices and large institutional capital gets involved in these kinds of things. That's longterminvesting.stanford.edu. Please feel free to visit the Stanford Technology Ventures program website, stvp.stanford.edu, with a lot more information about everything we're doing in these spaces. And I'll also want to leave you with one final comment that was mentioned by our students in the class that we were taking, because we were discussing the Silicon Valley model of move fast and break things. This is kind of the mantra that has been around Silicon Valley for some time. And, you know, one of the comments that was made by one of the students was, moving fast is great, but please stop breaking the things that we rely upon, like environment and society. We can't stand any more breaking things. So please move fast, but be thoughtful in the ways we innovate and the ways that we impact the world around us. And I just found that as a really big change from the viewpoint of our young people who are passionate about this problem. Yes, they want to move fast, but they want to be thoughtful and they want to have real beneficial impact in the world around us. So Keith, I'm going to turn it back to you to moderate a little bit of a discussion so we can go from there. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael. So I was hoping to sort of throw this out to all of us. Michael just described, if I can rephrase it, in some respects, a keen interest on the university, on Stanford, really focusing in on the people. Clearly, the need for a product and for solutions, but that at the core of that is people. And so I was curious, perhaps maybe Professor Cotilli, you could speak to this, and also Anna, that this people versus product. How would you kind of see that within some of the research, particularly with this crowdfunding practice, and how that again relates to industry and how industry may view that?
I think our I'm hopeful. I think younger generation they don't want to break things. They want to have a sustainable world, exactly as Mike just said. It's not yet reflected in our crowdfunding research results, but there's hope. There are segments, younger people, female investors who tend to be more concerned about sustainability and are more likely to not only talk about it, but also invest in more sustainable ventures. So I would say there are segments of younger generations who really take sustainability seriously and want to make sure we have a world for the future. Anna, do you want to add something from your research angle?
Yes, so I fully agree that there are, things are changing. In the meanwhile, though, given we don't have much time, one interesting thing that the research is implying is that we can also, sustainable ventures and sustainability can also cater for those who are not yet motivated by sustainability. They just then need to tweak their communications towards maybe more traditional investment criteria, for example. So there's definitely hope along all categories of capital providers.
Well, thank you for that. And I was curious, Professor Cotilli, you mentioned that perhaps women may be more keen on investing in things sustainable. I'm familiar with a group that was founded in San Francisco to women investing in climate and finance. And I was able to go to their inaugural chapter event in Los Angeles. But I have yet to find a male investing in climate and finance group. So perhaps there's something there, and I'll challenge us males to look towards that. So I'm curious to throw this out again. I did hear, we were listening to concepts of different levers of interdisciplinary practice and how that helps to sort of drive research development in the academic space, but then could help to sort of create connectivity with industry. Can somebody talk about, how interdisciplinary practices there at the university are helping to sort of move that?
Well, I can certainly comment on that, Keith, because that is one of the things that that the Door School was specifically set up to try to do. we know that the solutions that are going to be necessary for this problem are messy. And when I say messy, I mean, they're going to involve policy, they're going to involve technology, they're going to involve organizations, they're going to involve all kinds of different aspects of the problem. And all of those will need to be addressed concurrently to some extent in order to make them successful. And so therefore, our university decided to do the most bold thing that we could possibly do, which is the creation of a new school. That is the most that we can do as a university to try to get our hands around that complexity. And so by grouping folks together, faculty together, students together, researchers together in a new interdisciplinary space that has zero boundaries towards collaboration, we're trying to engage in that very multifaceted way. That being said, the new school is also tightly integrated with the rest of the university, including the School of Engineering, the Graduate School of Business, and other schools as well, because we know that it will take expertise in all of those disciplines to really think about meaningful solutions. If that answers your question.
I appreciate that. Professor Cotilla, do you have any other thoughts on this nexus between academic research and innovation and that applied research in the ecosystem of industry?
So our goal in the center is always to be practically relevant and theoretically interesting. That's our tagline. So we very much hope that the research findings are relevant and that we would be able to influence, for example, policy through the findings. And I do see one of our participants raise their hand. So Keith, I don't know if you wanted to ask Priyanka.
Well, actually, we're going to keep moving forward, I think, on that. What I'll do now, Anna, do you have any thoughts with respect to that?
I think that covers it very well.
All right. Well,
Keith, can I ask you a question?
Sure, absolutely, Michael.
One of the things that we're always interested in is interacting with industry, government in more effective ways to solve these problems. And so I'd love to hear your viewpoint on what do you think the best ways are that academia in our role, which is not boundless, can best interact with organizations like venture organizations, angel organizations, and industry more generally. What do you think are the best ways to interact?
Mm-hmm. The term best practices has challenges to it, but here in the United States, we have a northern neighbor that some would say when they engage in public-private partnerships, that they do a pretty solid job at that. That may be because they're a bit smaller in terms of their population. But I would suggest really trying to refine and as Radhika described, kind of reimagine and reinvent those kinds of pathways to relationships between those kinds of players. It comes back to the concepts of interdisciplinary thinking and action that you were describing. That is really a hallmark, actually, of Stanford engineering. So I would say that. And then perhaps also, universities and how universities drive innovation and support for innovators on campus, increasing those relationships for industry to do so is, I think, emblematic of a forward-thinking institution. And just to mention another, Stanford stalwart, which is MediaX, and the Graduate School of Education, and 20-year run doing that very thing. So those kinds of vibrant relationships, I think, are very, very crucial for that.
No, that's actually very helpful for us. Thank you.
So I want to finish up here and send it back over to Lisa, but I want to again say that our event today is co-convened by Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs of Southern California, and Stanford Alumni and Sustainability. And those are all 3 Stanford alumni clubs. And we're doing that in concert as part of the Breakthrough Alliance with the Joint SDG Fund and the UN family. And with that, I'll send it back over to our head secretariat and visionary, Lisa. So thanks so much, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Keith. You know, as Michael was asking that question, what can academia do? It made me think of all of the power that the United Nations has in terms of boots on the ground around the world, where so many of these challenges are persistently unaddressed. And is there a way to connect the brilliant young minds, that entrepreneurial spirit, that angel investment mentality to least developed countries? And really, we are trying to be that broker or convener or connector of those 2 worlds, you know, to go from more efficient light switches to actually electricity, like literally to connect those 2 separate worlds. So, you know, a conversation 90 minutes like this has my mind just so not only thrilled, but also wanting more. I think, you know, each of these amazing panelists could have been a 90-minute masterclass in an aspect of the challenge that we are all trying to jointly address. And I think the power of this network knows no limits. And I really want to acknowledge Radhika and Keith, because you are the ones who've helped pull this together. And Elaine, by the way, who is the one behind the scenes of the Joint Fund who's done all of this as well. So I don't know, Radhika, if you want to say a few final words, and then I'd prefer to hand over to Elaine for a few final remarks, and then we can close. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great. And this has been so energizing. This is the microcosm of what we need in the world, coming together from around geographies, around sectors, and kind of coming together with that common goal of advancing the SDGs and doing whatever it takes. The optimism, the insights, the depths that have come out here have been so inspiring. I just want to, without any further ado, I want to thank everyone. It has been an honor to be in community, in solidarity with everyone participating today from around the world. As speakers are participants. And I want to also thank Claudia, co-convener, and my dear friend from the Stanford Alumni in Sustainability. We need the voice of youth, like people like Claudia as well. And thank you, Lisa, and the Joint SDG Fund for your leadership in this kind of, and the question you asked, Professor Lebeck, this is exactly what Lisa at the UN is kind of innovating, pulling us private sector folks and bridge building, which enables what happened today. And that's the bridge building we need. We hope to do a lot more of that with the Door School. We would welcome your help in that. But with that, over to Elaine, who has tirelessly the kind of key force that has made this event happen. All the hard work behind the scenes is Elaine Smith-Genzer, and she's part of the leadership team at the Joint SDG Fund. Over to you, Elaine.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the organizers, co-hosts, and all participants. We had an incredible amount of people registering to our event today, and I cannot thank everyone enough. We are ending this Friday after a long week that a lot of people met in New York. Some of you were in New York. Some of you attended numerous sessions from your computers. So the SDG Summit that took place during Climate Week and the United Nations General Assembly, it's a great honor for us to be closing a week so busy for most of us with this event today. We will be receiving more information about the Breakthrough Alliance, the Joint SDG Fund, the recording of this for your use later. All the panelists, as Lisa was saying, were part of a constellation of stars that you're able to align today. So we'll be connecting to you again on behalf of the United Nations Joint SDG Fund to talk to you about the numerous issues of work that we can be doing together in the future. And with that, I believe we'll be finishing on time at 1:30 Eastern time. So thank you very much, everyone. And you're going to be hearing from us. Thank you.